Hey there, and we're joined right now, like I said, by Chad Prather, the, I guess, humorist, well known on the internet as, for a lot of different reasons. He's at watchchad.com, and he's currently on the Star Spangled Banter Tour. Chad, welcome.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Hey, who would ever thought you could actually make a living, actually starting the way that you started this whole thing?
Yeah. If people ask me how I got started doing what I do, and I had a television show, and I started making little videos for social media to promote the television show. And social media far outran anything I was ever doing on television. So who would have thought we live in a day and age where we'd rather be on Facebook than TV?
Yeah, oh, it's crazy. It is really crazy. Now, how many stops are you going to have in your comedy tour?
We'll probably wind up having about 70 or 75. We just added about 25 new dates that aren't on the website. We're waiting on the ticket links. But we're spending a lot of time in the Southeast the first half of this year, which is, being from the Southeast myself, is unusual. We weren't there a lot last year. So I'm excited to be kind of going around my folks, my people. So we're looking forward to it. But we'll make about 70, 75 stops this year.
Yeah, I moved down here to the Atlanta area about 1993. So I'm kind of a transplant myself. I found your background interesting. When you're born in New Jersey, raised in Augusta,
Yeah.
go to UGA, get a communications degree there. And my favorite part of your bio, by the way, is then got a master's from Columbia. And you gotta have a pause and a drag there. Oh yeah, International University.
There you go. That's exactly right. You always want to leave that long dramatic pause there and just let people assume what they want. But no,
He talks kind of funny for a Columbia man.
yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth. I talk funny for somebody from New Jersey too. I was born there. My parents. The joke is I was conceived in Dallas, so I say my parents did a dirty thing in a horrible place because Texans don't claim Dallas, and I get in trouble with that. But it's a fun joke. And then my father was an engineer, and so he had to go to New Jersey. And my mother happened to go into labor while they were there, and so I lived every bit of 4 months in New Jersey, right outside of New York City, before headed back to my mother's hometown of Augusta. So I tell people all the time, I say, yeah, you can really tell my New Jersey accent. Um, but yeah, I grew up in Augusta, went to school, University of Georgia, and had a blast there. And still claim Georgia is ultimately home. But 20 years ago, I moved out to Fort Worth, Texas. Never looked back.
Yeah, I enjoy your differentiation between Fort Worth and Dallas. I don't live in the
Yeah.
Dallas area. I live in Fort Worth. I know a lot of people that live in Fort Worth that are always very eager to point that out.
Yeah, I always say it's about 40 miles geographically in distance and a million miles culturally in difference. And so, I talk about the Dallas Fort Worth rivalry. I don't think that Dallas realizes there's a rivalry going on. It's just the Fort Worth people who pay attention to that. But they get pretty offended if you say they're from Dallas. They'll correct you real fast. I can remember, Randy. When I first moved out there, I had to go to a meeting over in Dallas and I was lost. I didn't know where I was going. So I pulled up to a laundromat. The guy opened up the little drive through window and I said, "Can you point me in the direction of Dallas?" And he said, "Absolutely not." He just slammed the window shut and never came back.
I like
That
that.
was that was my first real experience with that. He said, "No, absolutely not." And he was dead serious. So, but I love it. I love living in Fort Worth. It's my adopted home, and yeah, I've been there for 20 years. And I don't know that I'll ever be anywhere else. Although they do twist my arm to move to Los Angeles, and you probably know my feelings about that.
Yeah, I grew up in LA,
Yeah,
Out in the San Fernando Valley. Kind of similar in that I was born in New York, lived in Brooklyn, and then moved to LA. I was a product of the TV and movie business. My dad was an actor.
yeah.
So I got to spend a lot of time in LA. I'm very familiar with LA.
Yeah, I'm out there a lot, and I told him, I said, "Look, as long as the planes will fly out here, I'll keep coming." I just got back from out there, and I do enjoy it. I enjoy the pace of Los Angeles,
Hmm.
and for a country boy, I really am. I do have a city heart. I really do because I grew up in the middle of nowhere, where I grew up in Georgia, so it was just me, the dogs, and the horses, and so I didn't have a lot of human interaction. And so for a guy that likes to talk a lot and who's extremely hyperactive, I love being in places like LA where things are moving and shaking. So we have fun, and of course, if you've watched any of my videos, you know I do a lot of political commentary. So folks out in LA really don't know what to do with me, but we have a lot of fun with it though.
Well, I find it interesting, not only your stuff you do that's on the internet, you know, at watchchad.com and whatnot, and the YouTube videos and everything. Comedy is very much an industry, whether you're in the clubs, what you see on TV, whatever you're exposed to. It's a pretty liberal. It's a pretty liberal field. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me was Jimmy Kimmel's comment recently about, you know, well, the reason so many, you know, liberals are late night hosts is it takes a certain level of intelligence. I'm sure you've had a little fun with that.
Yeah, we've had some fun with it. We're actually pushing right now. I want to have a debate with between Jimmy Kimmel and Ben Shapiro, and let's see how far that goes in terms of his level of intelligence. My friend Austin Fletcher, who's out in LA, he does a lot of videos under the name Fleckus. He goes out and he'll interview people who are protesting and, you know, parading in the street and stuff. And his videos are really hilarious. But he's pushing real hard right now for a Ben Shapiro, Jimmy Kimmel. So I thought about shooting a message over to my buddy Adam Carolla. Adam has me on his show from time to time and say, "Man, why don't you twist Jimmy's arm and let's see about that level of intelligence." That could be pretty entertaining.
That'd be fun. It'd be fun to watch. It'd be fun to watch.
You know, but I have a hard time. You know, we go out and we book these theaters across the country, and a lot of people say, you know, book this city, book that city. It's really hard because so many theater owners and show buyers are liberal. And so they look at me and they say, well, you know, why would we have a conservative comic come into our place? We're going to catch flack for it. But really and truly, my show now, I'm a humorist, and I'm going to make fun of things. And so I poke the bear a little bit, but it's really not a political show as much as it's an American show. And so people, when they have us in, you know, they're always happy because they say, oh, it's not what we expected. And it's, you know, a lot of big laughs and a lot of fun. But it's funny when we go into that, a lot of people have these preconceived notions that it's going to be some big, you know, left bashing conservative show. And only to the degree that we can make it fun when we do that.
Hey, what exactly was your master's in from Columbia International? Because it is a multi-denominational Christian school.
Yeah, it was communications. It was communications. We did, you know, at one point in time, I was doing things. I was traveling all over the world working with ministries and nonprofit organizations. And that's really where I cut my teeth in the world of communication, you know, being on stage in front of other people. I was doing it all over the world. And so I was pursuing a degree from a faith-based institution like Columbia because I thought that was where my future was. And I really was in that for about 12 years. And then kind of went through some life changes. And I say I went and kind of hid in the cave. I just kind of hid from the world for about 5 years and then emerged back with one of those deals where you can only, if it's what you're supposed to be doing, like with me running my mouth and communicating, you can only hide from that for so long.
Right.
And so I came back to it, and I make a joke about one day I was at the gym. I wasn't in the gym. I was at the gym, a huge difference. And I was sitting in the parking lot making phone calls, called my wife on the phone. And I just told her, I said, look, I got to go back to make a living, just being myself. And she said, well, you know, what's the street value on your personality? And so, you know,
did you take a shot at a number? Or?
Well, my smart comment was it's worth as much as Obama giving a keynote speech at the NRA convention. And she said, well, that's worthless. And so it really was worthless. You know, I had nothing to step out on. I just knew that I had this ability to communicate, and I felt like there was a way to use social media to do it. And I wanted to make people laugh, and at the same time, you know, encourage people. I you know, the political thing kind of came along later simply because, you know, with the campaigns and everything we had in 15 and the election in 16, they were writing the jokes for us. And so I got to a point where I said, you know, I've got to speak out on some of these things because I felt like, honestly, our country in a big way, culturally, certainly was in a balance. And I felt like if I did not use my platform, that I was doing a disservice. And so had a lot of people who said, man, just keep your mouth closed about politics. It's going to be divisive. But I've never been one to really shy away from controversy. So we jumped in with both feet.
Hey, when you look at resources, and I guess from a standpoint of the media in general, whatever part of it we are of, It seems at times one side is like a fire hose and one side is like a garden hose.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that ever changes, or do you think that sort of stays the same?
Well, I don't know that it ever will change going forward. I can tell you that. I think that we're at a point now where the media and Hollywood and the entertainment industry has gotten so far left that unless the pendulum really swings another way, but the generation, this generation coming along now, their minds have been so indoctrinated by everything they've heard out of Hollywood and out of New York and out of Washington
Mm-hmm.
that they don't know another way to think. This idea of open-mindedness and discussion and dialogue and hearing the other side's points, you know, it's totally lost.
Right.
I tell people all the time, I said, the scary thing about social media is we have a real world, we have a virtual world. And a lot of people misinterpret the two. They think that they can go online, argue politics, argue culture, have their little battles and their wars, and with a complete and total stranger, and they interpret that as being the real world. It's not. It's a virtual world. That's just not where we live on a day-to-day basis out in the street.
Yeah. Well,
And so,
in that virtual world, though, don't you agree, Chad, that we've gotten to the point now where there isn't much discourse, there isn't much discussion. It's mainly you're
right.
going from 0 to FU in light speed.
Yeah, very, very fast. And that's been a big, on my podcast, I have a lot of different voices on there from folks that, from the left, from the right. And then I have a lot of entertainers and celebrities on my podcast show, the Chad Prather Show. And that's been the big focus for me is let's get back to dialogue and discussion. Now, admittedly, I do stir the pot with my videos because I want to generate discussion. Now, most of the stuff that I put out there, well, in my opinion, all the stuff that I put out there is good natured, is tongue in cheek. And for me, it's taking truth, wrapping it in humor and making it an easier pill to swallow. Unfortunately, though, a lot of folks nowadays, you're right, they don't know how to take that. They can't be ribbed. They can't joke around. I mean, you grew up, you know what it's like to be an athlete. You know what it's like to be in the locker room. I was an athlete, and you know what it's like to go at each other and give each other a hard time on the road, in the bus, on the on the plane, locker room, everything else. This culture nowadays, they have no concept of that. Kids today, they don't even keep score in some of the leagues, much less tolerate, any form of a ridicule amongst, peers. And so the idea of doing that is now it's interpreted as being mean instead of being fun or funny. We can't have fun with anybody anymore. So that concerns me quite a bit. I don't know if we can ever get back.
Yeah. I agree.
It's a soft mindset. It really is. I jokingly call it the participation trophy culture. I just, there's winners and there's losers in life. And sometimes, if you're losing, you turn it around and become a winner. But it's not a concept we teach anymore.
Hey, what's your definition, just for my listeners and my people that view this podcast, of being unapologetically Southern?
Well, the South was catching so much grief, still does in so many ways as a culture, because they're seen as backwards. They're seen as
don't forget racist.
Well, that was the next word out of my mouth. Everything is seen as racist. Everything is seen as ignorant. And I had a guy who sent me a message a couple of years ago, and he said, "Look, I can hear your accent, so I know where you're from. Therefore, I don't have to pay attention to you because I know you're ignorant." And I said, well, for me, it became an opportunity to say, well, let's see just how ignorant it is, And so, everything from, the culture that we have, from sitting on the front porch and communicating, to the food we eat, all the way to the industry that's in the South these days. The empire really is in the South. People don't ever think about that anymore. Georgia is the empire state of the South. It is the New York of the South. People don't realize the how much Southern culture influences so much of the world's way of thinking, and it really has. And where we lack in a lot of formal education, there's a lot of common sense with folks that grew up in the South and embrace that culture. Now, don't get me wrong, there's plenty to make fun of, and I do because I grew up in in Augusta, Georgia, where we could, if you can't find something to laugh at, but this idea of everything being, as you said, racist, it's just not the real world. I mean, does it exist? Of course, racism exists, but racism exists everywhere in the world.
Yeah.
But that's just not the reality we grew up in. I go back to the analogy talking about sports. We grew up, sleeping in the same bed together in the same hotel for nights in a row, and sleeping, taking showers in the same place and giving each other a hard time. And the idea of skin color, it didn't cross our minds. That was from an athlete's perspective, and that's whether you're in the South or anywhere. But we worked together and we played together and we had a great time. And I think now it's become more of a construct where people say, oh, well, you guys are, historically you guys had to have been racist because, take it all the way back to the Civil War. You must still be racist today. But that's not, again, the real world that people are living in the South.
Racism, isn't that why you still have statues?
Well, I tell you what, if you pull all the statues down, all the racism will go away. I can tell you that.
Guaranteed.
I mean, if you take down some outward symbol, it will change the inner nature of somebody's heart. I can tell you that. It gets rid of all the hate.
Hey, real quick, I wanted to share a quick story. About 88, 89, I went to Augusta for the Masters from California. I went into a small diner in downtown Augusta to get breakfast. And this guy I was with had been there several times. He goes, I'm going to order you something. You got to have it. And this plate comes, and I've got like cream of wheat and scrambled eggs on my plate. And I look at this other thing, and I'm looking, and I said, I get the eggs, I get the cream of wheat. And the lady goes, sorry, son, those are grits. I said, okay, cream of wheat, whatever. I said, but what is that? She goes, that's fat back. I said, fat's got a back?
That's funny. Was it any good? Did you eat it?
Yeah, it actually was. I'll be honest. I was a born in the Northeast California boy. I did cut the meat off of what I thought was the fat back and ate that. Didn't eat the whole thing.
That's funny. Yeah, my grandmother, I can remember to this day, my grandmother cooked breakfast every morning, and she was always cooking fat back. But yeah, growing up in the South, I wouldn't trade anything. I'm literally all over the world, and especially now I'm all over the country. And, I appreciate my roots from growing up in the South, and I wouldn't trade anything for it. We used to have an intramural football when I was at Columbia. We used to have an intramural football game once a year. Guys from the North would play the guys from the South. And so I was a quarterback for the South team. I was terrible at it. And if the North won, the following year, it was the Cream of Wheat Bowl. And if the South won, the following year, it would be the Grits Bowl. And so that's
like it.
Yeah, that was the name of the game. So,
hey, Chad, really want to thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it. Best of luck on the Star Spangled Banter Tour.
Yeah, man. And come see me. I'm going to be in Atlanta, I think May 19th. I'm in Atlanta at the Center Stage Theater there in Atlanta. So
yeah, know that well. We're definitely going to be there. So May 19th, Center Stage Theater.
Good deal, man. Well, hey, Randy, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And,
I appreciate it.
Always enjoy listening.
And where are the best places for the folks to get your stuff?
Jump on Facebook and just type Chad Prather, and you're going to find it. You get on Facebook, or you even get on Google and type Chad Prather, and it's going to pop up everywhere. And I've been real fortunate in that regard. But you can go to watchchad.com and catch me on the road. And, I'm usually stirring things up at politicalcowboy.com as well. So we have a lot of fun. And for those of you listening to podcasts, Chad Prather Show, wherever podcasts are available, we're having a lot of fun with that as well.
All right, Chad. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, and good luck on the tour.
Thanks, Randy.
All right, man.
How you doing,